The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, before I start, just early as I was viewing the House, there were very few members within this Parliament. I think we were majority, and I was tempted, Mr. Deputy. I was tempted to rise and move a motion for a vote of no confidence. However, there were two who came in the backbench, and they would have had majority by one. But I'm only warning the government that should that arise again, I'm certain that this side will attempt to move for a motion of no confidence, a vote of no confidence. Mr. Deputy, I rise today to make my contribution to this urban renewal bill. But before I begin, I must again note the absolute disorganization of the government with clearly little oversight and coordination of our Prime Minister. Recently, we were told that a mining bill would be debated. That was changed at the last minute. Then we were told that the mining bill would be debated last week, then late again, and at the last minute, we were told that we would be debating an entirely different bill. Sadly, Mr. Deputy, it demonstrates the utter chaos, massive confusion, and poor governance. Mr. Deputy, urban renewal has been around for some time under both the PLP and FNM administrations. And the objective of urban renewal is for the state to make an intervention in our inner city communities where there is too much poverty, violence, and disorder. The bill before us establishes the Urban Renewal Authority with the purpose of overseeing urban renewal in the Bahamas. And the authority, Mr. Deputy, would have as an objective several main functions which I support and which are outlined in the bill. The minister would have the power to declare an urban community by order. A board would govern the authority, and the board, with the approval of the minister, would appoint a managing director. The managing director would be responsible for the day-to-day administration of the affairs of the authority, including implementing policy of the minister, providing operational support of the board, and conducting research to ascertain which communities qualify for an urban renewal. I support the effort to modernize urban renewal through this bill. I am from Baintown, Mr. Deputy. Reviving these communities is near and dear to my heart. That is why my administration created the Over the Hill Initiative, which provided tax breaks and incentives for businesses in the inner city. Mr. Deputy, the Over the Hill community was declared as tax-free, no business license, tax breaks on vehicles that were used for the business, tax breaks in terms of duty for construction material, either for new building or expansion, and real property tax, Mr. Deputy. And during that time, individuals would have utilized at least about $2.5 million worth of the concession. We also had an entrepreneurial training program in conjunction with SPDC, and about 49 individuals took advantage of that. But what was most important, Mr. Deputy, they were able to create about 142 jobs, and at the same time, generate revenue of about $4.8 million 142 jobs. Mr. Deputy, imagine, and Angliston has been talking about it for a long time, and I would have thought that the government would have expanded to Angliston and others. However, the government dismantled, abandoned the whole process, stopped the inner city program. But imagine, Mr. Deputy, if it had expanded to Angliston, St. Barnabas, as we had anticipated, St. Barnabas, Forks Hill, Camp Road, Gambia, and parts of Fort Charlotte. Mr. Deputy, if it followed the path of Centerville, then 852 jobs would have been created. If it had followed the path of Centerville, in addition to 852 jobs that would have been created, a revenue of about $28.8 million would have been generated, and that money spent within that particular area. We also restored the Southern Recreation Ground, and there were other park restoration, the Joe Billy Park, Alvin S. Morse Park, Mother Francis Park, and Wi-Fi and CCTV were introduced, yet the government take ownership of the Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi program had started under us, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, sadly, the PLP administration ended this program, but I would have hoped that rather than ending, they would have expanded the program so that the businesses would have gotten another incentive. All new business would have gotten complete duty-free for first inventory. That would have been of great assistance, and I look forward to government reintroducing the legislation and make the amendment that is necessary. Many were greatly disappointed by this decision. It was uncalled for and hurts people in the inner city. Urban renewal was created by PLP administration. Urban renewal has done some good things. And unfortunately, it was often poorly run. It was often too politicized and was too often ineffective. Even though the PLP Urban Renewal 2.0, that was more of a slogan rather than a reform of urban renewal, the original and successive urban renewal by the PLP lacked a clear and comprehensive social intervention strategy and plan. Successive F&M administrations did not kill urban renewal. We made our adjustments, but the program was continued and exists to this day. Those on the governing side could have made adjustments to the Over the Hill initiative and left it in place. And I would hope that that amendment would be, as I've mentioned earlier. But the governing side made a heartless decision, which only hurts poor and working class Bahamians. Mr. Deputy, some would interpret it as some form of dislike or mistreatment of the poor, but yet, when you look at what's happening with BPL, the poor is not given an opportunity. I would remember, Mr. Deputy, in 1987, and this is very important, in 1987, while at the barber on Gibbs Corner and Market Street, Lipstick's Barbershop, a well-known PLP politician came in the barbershop at that time from a distinguished family, senior politician, PLP politician, and he said to us in the barbershop that he hoped that one day BPL and others would be privatized, but we should save our monies because that would be great opportunity for us, the people within the inner city and elsewhere, to invest it would be a great opportunity. Those were the words of a senior PLP politician. He knew that that was the right path to take, however, involvement of the people. Mr. Deputy, the government had put in the Bahamas grid, BPL distribution and transmission, $100 million worth of asset representing 40%, which meant that 20% represent $50 million. But yet, the members of the private sector I refer to as the oligarchs only put in about $30 million, when in actual fact, it should have been $50 million in order to control or have ownership of 60%. And I would hope that it would be answered one day as to why this $20 million discount. Then, Mr. Deputy, why the shares are so expensive. It's totally different from what even the PLP senior personnel in 1987 was talking about. Share of 50 million, 50,000 automatically excludes certain individuals. Then we're now talking about the island power producers provide shore power for the cruise ships. There'll be opportunities again, but would that follow the same path, eliminating the small man? I see they're trying to make a correction today after I've been making noise. But it's estimated, Mr. Deputy, that just next year, in 2025, you probably will have about 1,225 ships visiting our shores. You know the millions of dollars you're talking about in terms of profit? Should the poor not be a part or have opportunity to buy shares? But that's not the real thing. I don't have a problem with privatizing. All I'm saying is every Bahamian should have an opportunity. Do not create the oligarchs like we have seen in Russia. You know what happens. Poverty increases. Wealth remains within certain grouping or family structures. That should not happen in this country. But, Mr. Deputy, the money is coming from the bunker. Imagine if 1,225 cruise ships in 1 year. And we know the American law that only ships or vessels that use LNG can enter the American waters. Therefore, the power plant that they want to put at Iraqi, the real objective and goal is for bunkering of LNG, because that represents millions, if not billions of dollars. But for God's sake, it cannot be the oligarchs. Even when the FNM was looking at it, 65% of that were to go to the government, 25% to the Bahamian populace, and 15% to the private, to Shell. So, Mr. Deputy, we must look at that very, very serious. Having an urban renewal authority may be a good thing, but more important is the need for a comprehensive urban development plan and intervention strategy. The PLP has neither of these. They may create a new authority, but they have no long-range plans or strategy of urban renewal. To win elections, the PLP plan has always been to keep certain voters dependent on PLP handouts. The FNM has always had a bigger and more compassionate agenda based on the ideals of opportunity. What I just spoke about is an opportunity for Bahamians, not the oligarchs and subsequently more poverty within the Bahamas. The FNM has always had a bigger and more compassionate agenda based on ideals of opportunity, empowerment, and social justice. The PLP talks about the poor in order to win, but they are constantly betraying the poor. It is the PLP that put VAT on bread basket item. A loaf of bread has become very expensive. And while people are trying to afford bread for sandwiches for their children, the PLP is traveling the world in grand style, and the Prime Minister is sitting in comfort in this new BMW. The PLP has no conscience and care for the poor. The Bahamas has a serious problem, Mr. Deputy, with crime and violence. Urban renewal was created to help with this problem. The PLP administration promised on the campaign trail to deal with crime. They promised while in office to deal with crime and violence. Nothing they have done has worked. In their first full year in office, there were 128 murders. This was the second highest murder count in our history. Mr. Deputy, I also should mention that with our inner city program, murder within the inner city had decreased. Check the statistics. Armed robbery within the inner city had decreased. Check the statistics. Last year, there were 110 murders. This year, we're now at 104 in October, putting us on pace for approximately 120 murders again. The Prime Minister, Mr. Deputy, realizes that he has failed on crime and that this is now a political problem. He launched yet another crime plan last week, and this one is called Clear, Hold, and Build Strategy. It began on Monday in Angleton, and let me say for the record that I hope that it works. But let's not forget that this is a part of the same plan they announced in January. So far, they have failed to clear and to hold certain areas. Their plans have failed again. Now, nearing the end of the year, they are back in the same failed plan. This Prime Minister, lacking in energy, focus, and resolve, has no clear vision or plan to fight crime. He is running scared and has no ideas to combat crime and violence. You know, Mr. Deputy, it was ironic and amazing. I see our Prime Minister, unfortunately, he's left. He's busier traveling and doing things like singing songs to world leaders overseas, you know, who were hardly even paying attention. I was hoping he was here. Since he was singing to world leaders, I was going to ask him to sing to us. But he didn't want to know, too. But, Mr. Deputy, he's failing badly, and everybody can see it, including his own cabinet. I will always support the government when it comes to crime fighting. There's too much killing in our Bahamas, and especially on New Providence. I will always support the government with crime fighting. We on the opposition side will be monitoring the data to determine if this new plan by the Prime Minister has any impact. We hope he doesn't fail again, like all his other crime fighting initiatives. We need safer communities. What I fear, though, is that the well-meaning police officers and other state agencies tasked to carry out the crime plan will not have the support they need from the government, who seems to be often, Prime Minister, who seems to be often out of the country when there is a crisis. He was here to announce this plan, but we all know where the Prime Minister's main focus lies. Prime Minister focuses on traveling to conferences. He has been missing in action more than any other Prime Minister in any 5-year period in our history. For urban renewal to work and for this crime plan to work, our country needs a focused and disciplined leader who is committed to the on-the-ground work that is required. My administration was able to keep murders under 100 in back-to-back years, 2019, 91, 2018, 91, 1973, and 1979 and 2073. It is possible to make an impact on our crime crisis if the leader of the country is willing to give full support and focus to the crime-fighting policies of our state. Mr. Deputy, as mentioned, I support urban renewal and the reforms in this bill. Urban renewal requires wide-scale youth initiatives, that keep young people engaged in positive activities. It is important that we as legislators invest as much as possible in young people in order to prevent them from taking up a life of crime. We must make every effort to save as many of our young people as possible through positive programs such as what are delivered via urban renewal. As we reform urban renewal, I advise the New Day administration not to abuse it by filling the organization with political cronies who have little experience or who just want a job and a car with a red plate. The PLP is known for overstaffing state agencies with supporters. We need an urban renewal staffed with qualified people who are able to do the work to help uplift our people. Urban renewal will fail at its objectives if the authority does not have the trained personnel it requires to carry out its mandate. As I conclude my remarks, Mr. Deputy, it is necessary for me to comment on a matter of great national interest that occurred during the last PLP administration when the current Prime Minister was Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Deputy, at the end, I would table all documents. A judge in New York has found that Sarkis Esmerlius Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing in June 2015 was a foreseeable and natural consequence of fraudulent actions by China Construction American, CCA, and related entities. This is yet another global scandal involving the PLP. I wish to read from the Tribune editorial on this matter. And I read, fraud is the word used by the judge at least 4 instances, resulting in an award of $1.6 billion in damage to Mr. Ismailian. That's the $845 million equity contribution his family provided to the development plus interest. The contractor is described as having perpetrated an absolute sham and shakedown on Mr. Ismailian. CCA is said to have ordered or condoned the slowing or stopping of construction work on Bahama in the months leading up to the missed opening in order to further its commercial interests. I remind the country that CCA is a state agency of the Chinese government. The Tribune editorial stated that in the commercial part of the ruling, but there is also a political, that is the commercial part of the ruling, but there's also a political dimension. One of the contractor's senior executive was found to have admitted to all this before Perry Christie, who was Prime Minister at that time. If this is true, the former Prime Minister has much explaining to do to the Bahamian people. Mr. Christie must share his knowledge of this. This is a serious allegation, the Tribune went on to say. Then there is the connection with Mr. Christie's senior policy advisor, Sir Bertram Bethel, who was point man in the dealing with Bahama dispute. The U.S. judge ruled that CCA actively worked to curry favor with the Bahamian government, with the record evidence establishes that $2.3 million were made to Nortac Management Group, run by Sir Bertram's son, Leslie, to help gain access to his father. Why, Mr. Deputy, did Bertram Bethel's son get paid by CCA? For what services? Why was the son of the government's point man paid $2.3 million? What more is known of this company, Nortac? What did Sir Bertram know? Why else? Who else was paid by CCA? Who else got contracts? Let us recall that Sir Bertram was knighted by Perry Christie. The Tribune noted The judge noted of the testimony of Daniel Liu, Mr. Liu confirmed in his deposition testimony, that he did so because he was looking for help from Leslie Bethel and wanted Leslie Bethel to speak to his father, Sir Bartram Bethel, about proposed edits made by Sir Bartram Bethel to the heads of agreement. Leslie Bethel.
Sir, we are actually
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
looking at the article that Kalani is reading, and he is adding things to the article as outlined in the document.
I'm going to table everything.
But it's not the article.
As I said, I would table
No.
everything.
You said that you were reading from an article
And you know
from
which
the,
part.
you are
And I
ad-libbing.
I asked questions, and the
No,
questions were
no.
not-
Just clarify. Mr. Deputy, the member for Kalani indicated that he was reading an editorial. But in the editorial, we were following his utterance from the editorial, and quite a bit that he was speaking about the editorial is not included.
Is it
so
the
he
same
needs to
editorial?
differentiate what you're saying from the editorial. That's all we're asking. If you're saying you're supposed to say "and," you cannot continue on ad-libbing as if you're reading from an editorial. I suggest that he withdraw it and clarify it.
At the end of my debate, I will table the document.
Thank you, honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. The Tribune also noted, first of all, Leslie Bethel reassured Mr. Liu that Sabi is one of CCA's biggest supporters and promised to provide further help with the defendant's interactions with the Bahamian government. Mr. Liu reciprocated the sentiment, saying, "I am sure about Sir Bethel, Sir Bartram, and yourself as our best friends." The Tribune also noted, end quote, the Tribune also noted, there is more too in the U.S. ruling, including the prospect that Bahamas' financial crisis could have been avoided entirely if CCA had used $54 million to pay subcontractors. Instead, it was used to fund the purchase of the British colonial Justice Barack ruled. CCA has said the $54 million was needed to pay subcontractors and cover construction changes. But the judge said this was an absolute sham and shakedown, that CCA had other plans for the money. It can be easy to get lost in all of that, but what it amounts to is that a developer who came to the Bahamas in good faith was subject to treatment that appeared designed to cause problems with the project, resulting in the loss of control and a drawn-out legal process that has secured a $1.6 million award in compensation. The closeness, Mr. Deputy, of that process is governed, that process to government figures at the time is uncomfortable, to say the least. A simple review by the Attorney General is insufficient to get to the bottom of the level of involvement at the time and whether it was or was not appropriate. A far greater investigation ought to be conducted, and actually with the intention for it to be completed and the outcome made public. This is too big to be swept under the carpet. It affects the reputation of the Bahamas, the trust that future developers can have over the good faith their own projects will be treated with, and the expectation that any wrongdoing will be met with justice here at home. Mr. Deputy, an independent crime investigation is needed into what happened with Bahama during this period of last Christie administration. I want to publicly congratulate Mr. Sarkis at Minnis on the success at this time, this case. And Mr. Deputy, let me say, and let me say it slowly, let me say it slowly, This country needs a purge. Let me repeat. This country needs a purge. And I go on and say, and listen to me, and I want all to listen to me. This country needs an enema to cleanse the bowel of politics. I repeat, this country needs a purge, and it needs an enema to cleanse the bowels of politics. Mr. Deputy, I spoke earlier about the need for commission. The question is, who all got illegal funds from the Chinese and other sources during this Bahama feud with this million? The Prime Minister has referred the matter to the Attorney General, but it's unclear what that means. Few to no Bahamians are confident that the PLP will honestly investigate alleged corruption in the PLP. This is a scandal that goes right into the office of the former Prime Minister. We need an independent process to get answers on behalf of the people. As the Tribune said in its editorial, it is easy to believe that these reviews and commissions and investigations by the PLP are nothing more than a way to push a matter into the long grass and hope it goes away. Mr. Deputy, they will not go away because the opposition, the COI and others, will have much to say on this latest major scandal by the PLP. I said COI and others, many, even some among you who have once stained the reputation of the Bahamas. From the drug era to this latest corruption surrounding certain people in the PLP, the question is, Mr. Deputy, the question that would go on the record, do we have a nation for sale? Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up.
What's today's date? 30th?
Order that the documents do lie on the table. As many. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Yamakoro.
Mr. Deputy Speaker,